My heart raced with a nervous flutter, like a bird caught in a sudden storm, as his hand brushed my thigh under the dinner table, a brief, unexpected touch that lingered through the fabric of my dress. I should have shifted away, should have offered a light laugh to dispel the moment, but the warmth of his gesture sent a wave of unease through me, holding me still with a quiet intensity one couldn't explain. Clara was just 10 feet away in the kitchen, her laughter a bright, comforting melody as she prepared dessert, completely unaware of the subtle shift unfolding between her husband and me. I gripped my wineglass tighter, my knuckles whitening as I tried to steady my breathing, the air thick with an awkward tension. "You seem uneasy," he murmured, leaning closer under the pretense of reaching for the salt, his voice soft and curious, his breath a gentle stir against my ear that made my pulse quicken with uncertainty. I met his eyes, warm and thoughtful, reflecting the soft glow of the room, and felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, a moment that hinted at a connection beyond our usual friendship, leaving me momentarily lost. Enjoyed the beginning? Hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what caught your attention. The evening had begun with the promise of a peaceful gathering, a chance to reconnect with old friends. Clara had invited me over for one of her warm, inviting dinner parties, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm as she said, "Just the three of us, a casual, relaxed night in the heart of Paris." I'd arrived in my favorite emerald dress, a simple choice that complemented my 28-year-old frame, thinking only of enjoying time with my closest friend, a decision that now carried an unintended weight under the cozy ambience of her home. But the moment James opened the door, a subtle shift settled over us, a quiet hum of tension that seemed to linger in the air. "Sophie," he said, his voice carrying a gentle warmth, his hazel eyes resting on me with a lingering glance that felt unexpectedly personal, "you look wonderful tonight." I smiled it off as his usual kindness, the friendly charm that had always made me feel at ease because he was Clara's husband, a 34-year-old man I'd known through years of shared holidays and laughter. Yet tonight felt different, the way he stood a bit closer than necessary when he took my coat, the way his fingers brushed mine as he handed me a glass of wine, it all carried a quiet intensity that stirred a sense of unease I couldn't quite name, a current that tugged at the edges of our familiar dynamic. Clara emerged from the kitchen, radiant at 33, her presence a burst of light as she pulled me into one of her warm, enveloping hugs that carried the scent of fresh herbs and baked goods. "I'm so glad you're here. James has been looking forward to this all week," she teased, giving him a fond, playful look that spoke of their deep bond. "Absolutely," he replied, but his eyes drifted to me, not her, sparking a flicker of discomfort that settled in my chest like a quiet question. Dinner conversation flowed easily at first. Clara shared stories of her new role at the gallery, her passion for art lighting up her face as she described a recent exhibit opening. I recounted my recent trip to Milan where I'd turned 28 just weeks ago, the memory of its vibrant streets still fresh, and James added his dry humor with a smile that felt oddly directed. Beneath the surface, though, I sensed a shift, a quiet undercurrent that made me hyper-aware of his 34-year-old presence, the way his voice seemed to carry a deeper note when he spoke to me. Every time Clara turned to adjust the table settings or refill a dish, James's attention turned to me with a focus that made my skin tingle, his eyes a silent curiosity I couldn't decipher. When she rose to check on the main course, he leaned in slightly, his voice a low murmur meant only for me. "You seem quiet tonight. Everything all right?" "I'm fine," I said, my voice catching slightly under the weight of his gaze, betraying the thoughts swirling within. His smile was warm, reassuring, a gentle curve that eased the moment but left a trace of tension. "Good. I'd hate for you to feel out of place." But at ease was elusive, a quiet unease settling in as if the room itself held its breath, waiting for something to shift. When Clara called from the kitchen that the roast needed a few more minutes, her voice a cheerful interruption that echoed off the soft walls, James shifted his chair closer to mine with a subtlety that caught me off guard. His knee brushed against mine under the table, a contact that felt accidental yet deliberate, sending a jolt of surprise through me that rooted me to my seat. I didn't move, my breath catching as the warmth of his presence pressed against me. "She's amazing, isn't she?" he said, nodding toward the kitchen where Clara hummed softly, her trust evident in the way she moved, so focused on creating a perfect evening with her carefully prepared dishes. There was a note of admiration in his tone, but his hand rested briefly on my knee under the tablecloth, a touch that made my heart skip and my thoughts scatter. "James," I whispered, a mix of surprise and hesitation, but he withdrew, his expression softening with a hint of regret. "She never notices the small details," he said lightly, his voice carrying a trace of fondness, always focused on making everyone feel welcome. The comment stirred a mix of guilt and curiosity in me, a contrast to the warmth of his earlier gesture, leaving me to wonder about the man I thought I knew so well. "You should be mindful," I murmured, keeping my voice low, a gentle nudge to restore the comfort we'd always shared. "Should I?" he replied, his tone playful yet sincere, pulling back to give me space as he reached for his water glass, his movement careful and considerate. Clara's laughter drifted in, bright, trusting, a sound that anchored me, and a wave of relief washed over me as the moment passed, the tension easing like a cloud drifting from the sky. I tried to focus as she returned, chatting about the roast and her plans for a new art project, but I remained aware of James beside me, his 34-year-old presence a quiet presence that challenged my 28-year-old sense of balance, a presence that seemed to fill the room with unspoken possibilities. "The roast needs another 20 minutes, Clara said, settling back into her chair with a smile that radiated warmth, oblivious to the brief undercurrent that had surfaced. "I hope you don't mind the wait." "Not at all," James replied smoothly, his voice a mask of calm as he adjusted his napkin. "Gives us time to catch up with Sophie." His foot brushed mine under the table, a gentle contact that made me pause, but he quickly shifted away, his glance apologetic yet lingering. Clara smiled at us both, her 33-year-old innocence a stark contrast to the fleeting tension, unaware of the quiet shift between her husband and her 28-year-old best friend. "Actually," Clara said, standing again with a light laugh, "I should check on the vegetables too. You two don't get too serious while I'm gone." If only she knew the depth of the thoughts that had briefly danced between us. The moment she disappeared into the kitchen again, James turned to me with a thoughtful look, his expression softening. "You're different tonight," he said softly, his voice a gentle "Just tired," I replied, but his gaze held mine, hinting at something unspoken, a connection that felt both new and familiar. The evening continued in a gentle flow, the tension easing as we talked and laughed over Clara's delicious spread, the clink of glasses and the hum of conversation filling the space with warmth. She shared more about her gallery dreams, her hands animated as she described a canvas she was sketching, while I added stories of Milan's bustling markets, the scent of fresh bread still vivid in my memory. James contributed with his dry wit, his laughter a bridge between us, though every so often his eyes met mine with a quiet intensity that made my heart pause. As the night wore on, we moved to the living room, sharing a second bottle of wine, the soft glow of the city lights filtering through the windows, casting gentle shadows across the room. Clara's warmth enveloped us, her trust a steady anchor as she recounted a funny story from her gallery opening, her laughter infectious. But I couldn't shake the memory of that brief touch, the way it had stirred a sense of unease and curiosity I hadn't anticipated. We lingered over dessert, Clara's famous chocolate torte, trading stories of past gatherings, the room filled with the comfort of shared history. Yet, beneath it all, I felt the weight of that moment, a silent question that lingered in the air. When I finally made my excuses to leave, the clock nearing midnight, Clara's hug was warm and lingering, her voice soft with gratitude. "I'm so glad you came tonight. We need to do this more often, you and James always bring such life to the table." James stood beside her, his quiet take care carrying a note of warmth that felt personal, a subtle echo of the evening's earlier tension. I stepped into the cool Paris evening at 11:58 a.m. Central European Summer Time on Saturday, August 2, 2025, the city's quiet hum a backdrop to the thoughts swirling in my mind.